Hello and welcome to this month's webinar provided to you by Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. My name is Mike Kramer. I am the Calibration Inspection Program Manager at PJLA. And I want to welcome you all to this webinar, our first one of 2019. So today we're going to look at section 6.6, which is externally provided products and services. And this is in regards to that section in the 2017 17025 standard. Okay, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website, pjlabs.com. We have a tab at the top, which is marked webinars. Click that tab, follow the links. At the conclusion of this webinar, it will be up there. And we have a vast array of webinars that we've been doing over the last couple of years. So if you want to go back and listen to this one, it will be available. Also, you can look at the topics and perhaps go back and look at one you may have missed in the past. So back to today's topic, externally provided products and services. In the 2005 standard, we had two separate sections, 4.5, which was subcontracting, and 4.6, which was purchasing. One of the changes from 2017 is you don't see that word subcontracting, and you don't see purchasing. They're both considered to be externally provided products and services. So both of these are incorporated into this one section. So of course 17025 has requirements for purchasing. These are, and we'll see later on, these incorporate supplies and services that are directly related to your testing or calibration lab activities. Various requirements, but even without the requirements in place, sure, you're going to be doing this because 17025 has requirements specifying it. But if you think about it, when you're selecting a potential vendor, you're actually selecting a partner in your business, someone you want to trust to work with you in a professional and profitable manner. And it's important that you choose a company that can supply your requirements now and future needs. Of course, we're required to comply with the requirements of 17025. However, there's importance in this with those requirements aside when you're selecting products and services and going to be working with outside vendors. So we just want to highlight a couple things within 6.6. Specify that the laboratory should have a system to select, access, monitor, and assess external providers. The laboratory shall ensure that all purchased products and services fulfill the requirements. The laboratory shall make the following clear to the provider. Going to purchase something that's incorporated into the laboratory. You want to clearly specify what is to be brought, any acceptance criteria, and any personal competence that may be needed. I want to pause here. I think I failed to mention something at the beginning. On your pane, on your screen, you should have a section for questions. You can, if you have any questions as we're going along, and please keep the questions related to today's topic, feel free to type those in there. At the conclusion of the webinar, I'll go back, I'll open up that pane, I'll review the questions, and answer as many as I can. So should have mentioned that prior to getting into the presentation. So there's three different ways, and we'll go over 661 ABC, which describes which products and services can be provided externally. One thing I want to specify here is we're in this section, and I know in 2005 it was very specific with subcontracting. So bear in mind, this section here, when we're talking about subcontracting, this is the approval of your subcontractor. If you elect to subcontract testing or calibration activities, this is the process. These are the requirements for approving those entities that you're going to have do the subcontracting for you. It doesn't. Subcontracting is also mentioned under review request tenders and contracts. There's a clause there which specifies under 771C that basically, if you are going to subcontract work, you have to obtain your customer's approval for that. Bear in mind, this is a separate section. This is looking at the approval. You approving folks to do subcontracting for your organization, whereas under review tenders and contracts, those subcontractors that you approve, before you can utilize them, you have to gain your client's approval. Okay, so this is a relatively short section within the standard, but there's quite a bit of substance here. First thing we're going to look at is 661, and this is verbatim from from the standard. The laboratory shall ensure that only suitable externally provided products and services that affect laboratory activities are used when such products and services are A, intended for incorporation into the laboratory's own activities, directly involved in the calibration or testing that's being undertaken, are provided in part or in full directly to the customer by the laboratory as received from the external provider. Talking about subcontracting there. And then last but not least, are used to support the operation of the laboratory. So these might not be, and we'll see here in a bit, these are things that aren't directly involved in the testing, day-to-day testing or calibration, but they are utilized to support the testing or calibration activities. So in a nutshell, as stated, suitable externally provided products and services that affect laboratory activities. So with the 17025 standard, we aren't concerned of maybe other services that are required that aren't directly related or incorporated into laboratory activities, such as office supplies, office cleaning, perhaps catering services. Down the bottom there are items that definitely would be included in this section. Equipment, such as a balance, reference materials, if you're incorporating that, you're acquiring, you're purchasing them from a supplier. Calibration, you have testing equipment you use, you have to have it calibrated, it needs to be traceable. Hence, you're going to go to a provider. That provider would be incorporated into these requirements before you can use them. You have to evaluate and approve them. So expanding on this a little bit further, there's a note in the standard that sort of goes into detail of what we're talking about under this section. Those activities that are directly involved in the day-to-day activities of the lab, but there's other things, we'll call them support functions here, and they're incorporated in these notes. So for example, if you think about it, PJLA, if you're accredited with us, we're subjected to this evaluation and these requirements from your facility. I could start Mike's accrediting service, start a business. However, I don't have the credentials. I'm not under the ILAC MRA, and I don't have the resources that PJLA has. Other support functions include proficiency testing. You go out, you're doing third-party PTs. You have to evaluate and approve those suppliers as well. You may be using an internal auditor or even a consultant that's utilized in your laboratory activities. Software, you go out, you have a software that's going to be incorporated. Of course, you're going to go to a vendor for that. Software may need to be supported. You're going to have to, any organization in which you get software, if it's incorporated to support laboratories' activities, then they would be subjected to these requirements. Mention sampling. You're a testing organization. You could have a provider that actually goes out, takes water samples, gas samples, seed samples, whatever they may be. Bring it, go out to your client's location, take the samples, follow the protocol for taking samples, bring it back to your organization where you're actually doing the testing. That would also fall under the realm of Section 6.6. Okay, 6.6.2, the laboratory, and I have highlighted shall have a procedure and retain records. So this is one of the areas where in the 2017 standard, a procedure is still needed, something that tells us how it's going to be done. And then we're also you're going to have records here showing us how it's been done. So see here in a little bit the 2017 standard that offers you a lot more flexibility here. So under 6.6.2, we have to have a procedure and we have to have the records for A, defining, reviewing, and approving the laboratory's requirements for externally provided products and services. B, defining the criteria for evaluation, selection, monitoring, performance. In addition to the 2017 is the reevaluation of externally providers. So it's not just a one-time thing. You could approve someone in there, you have to monitor them, and the requirements in 2017 is subjected to reevaluation. C, ensuring that externally provided products and services conforms to the laboratory established requirements or when applicable to the relevant requirements of this document before they are used directly or directly provided to the customer. So this document, of course, is the 17025. So if you have, let's say, for example, complying with traceability requirements within the 17025 standard, hence your supplier must comply with those requirements. If you have specific requirements as stated in your own internal quality management system within your organization, and you want to assure that any supplier of any product or services will comply. And then last, D, taking any action arising from the evaluation, monitoring of, performance, and reevaluation of the external provider. So one thing, those of you that's listened to me in the past, I like to use the term less prescriptive, the 2017 standard. It's more up to date with today's electronic age. 2005, we were seeing a lot more paper copies. You don't see that referred to as much in the 2017 standard. However, still can be utilized, but the standard gives you much more flexibility. So one thing that was very specific in the 2005 standard that's no longer required, however, it can still be utilized and comply with the requirements of the 2017 standard, is that the 2017 standard got rid of the list. So in the 464 is from the 2005 standard. You always was required to evaluate your suppliers that could affect the quality of your testing and calibration. However, you was requested to list those approved. So as an assessor and internal auditor, you were looking for a list of those suppliers that were approved, i.e. a approved vendors list would typically be title of something like that. So that would be something that was required. So it's no longer a requirement that you actually have to have that list. However, you have more flexibility. So I know in smaller organization, the list may work very well for you. The 2017 standard, even though you're not provided, or not required to have the suppliers per se listed, you still have to show how they were evaluated and approved. The list can still be used to do that, capture all the required elements in the 2017 standard. However, it may be done in another fashion, such as more through the electronic means. You may have a quite numerous list of suppliers that are involved in your laboratory activities, and a list could be cumbersome. It could be done more by an electronic means, where it could be pulled up electronically and not so much as a list where you're going down a particular list of vendors and seeing if they've been subjected to the approval process. So very heavy there on evaluation, selecting, monitoring of the performance, and reevaluating of external providers. 2005, 2017 all require this. 2017 has been expanded to the reevaluation and the monitoring. So some tools that could be used, for example, could be, let's say, accreditation to 17025. You have traceability requirements, for example. You're assured that by going to a calibration lab that's 17025 accredited. We mentioned PJLA is your accrediting body. Criteria that could be used to evaluate PJLA would be the recognition under 17011. That's PJLA's, that's a standard that PJLA is recognized under, which when we are assessed by APLAC under the ILAC MRA, that's the standard that we are complying with. Proficiency test providers, a criteria could be 17043 recognition. That's that's the ISO standard for third-party proficiency testing providers. You can also use other things such as 9001. If you utilize a supplier that's 9001 certified, you know they have a quality system in place, that they are addressing things like complaints, corrective action. A lot of the things that you do in 17025, you going through a supplier that's through 9001 would assure that those elements are in place. Other things that could be very important to you, other than just recognition, accreditation, certification, would be things such as on-time delivery could be used. You could do your own supplier audit. You could actually go on site. You could do. I used to get them quite often. Supplier audits come into the mail. Fill out, return in order to maintain status of a particular client's approval list to be utilized as a vendor. You can look at testimonials and references that are valuable. If you can check and see that the vendor is reliable as they claim to be. Of course, they want your business initially. So I can sort of use testimonials and references as a tool for selection. Years in business. Somebody's been in business for 50 years. Chances are they know what they're doing, and they're doing it very well. Last but not least, and I'm going to expand on here, you can have specific accuracy requirements and capabilities, which, let's say, for example, you need that 17025 accreditation for traceability. However, there may be additional requirements that may warrant further than just that recognized 17025 accreditation. Here we see a sampling of an organization. This is a calibration organization. Say temperature. They can calibrate, say you have a digital thermometer. This lab appears to be able to do that. Hence, they'll fulfill the requirement of being accredited to 17025. But if you look at the ranges, they're accredited to calibrate between those ranges, between minus 20 degrees C and 200 degrees C. Hence, if you had a need to be 300 degrees C, this lab is not recognized under their accreditation to do so. Next column over, we see calibration and measurement capabilities. And it says expressed as an uncertainty. So what that is it is uncertainty. However, it's the best uncertainty that that organization can produce. Hence, if your accuracy requirements are, let's say if this organization had 0.2 degrees C under there, 0.045 is pretty good. To say it was 0.2, and your protocol or your procedure calls for 0.1 degree accuracy. This client's not going to be able to provide that under their accreditation. So just because an organization is accredited, yes, they can fulfill traceability. You may have specific accuracy requirements and capability requirements, which would warrant looking at the ranges and then also the CMCs that the organization has under their published scope. Also, reevaluation. So it's not a one-time thing. Scopes change, things get added, things get taken off for various reasons. Organizations, if you're accredited, you know you're subjected to maintaining it. Or one reevaluation could be assuring that they're maintaining their accreditation, i.e. the expiration date, which is always published, and then assuring that whatever service that you're receiving is still on that scope of accreditation. Okay, the very last clause is 663. So you have approved vendors, you evaluate it, you reevaluate it. You need to actually communicate with what needs to be ordered. So the 663 covers this. The laboratory shall communicate, and I highlighted that because communication can come in various avenues. We'll look back in 2005 where it was very prescriptive of how that had to be communicated. So what needs to be communicated? Of course, you communicate the products and services to be provided. If you have any acceptance criteria, talked about well, in a previous webinar, the decision rule, statement of compliance. If you have any sort of acceptance criteria, pass, fail, intolerance, out of tolerance, that needs to be communicated. And if this says the laboratory shall communicate its requirements, so all these may not be applicable. If there's any competence requirements, including any required qualification of personnel, say personnel is performing a specific testing or calibration, if they hold a particular, may be a requirement that they have some sort of license in place. And then any activities that the laboratory or its customers intend to perform at the external provider's premises. Talking about subcontracting there again. So main thing I wanted to highlight here was, and I've sort of depicted here in the bottom, any one of these methods would be fine. Maybe others here, phone, order online, or you can still utilize, write it out, put it on a purchase order, what your requirements are to your vendors. You got the flexibility here in the 2017 standard. Just got to ensure that these requirements are being communicated to your provider. So looking back in 2005, for those of you who are transitioning, if you're using a PO, and in the 2005, we were looking for a document. You see right there in 463, purchasing documents. So looking for like a purchase order. In 2005, if you specified, we called them. We don't have that document. They would have it would have been a non-conformance. In 2005, you were looking for a purchasing document, and the requirement was the purchasing documents for items affecting the quality of laboratory outlets shall contain data describing the services and supplies ordered. These purchasing documents shall be reviewed and approved for technical content. So we're looking for a document, and ideally that the technical manager had their eyes on it. That's no longer required. However, that can still be used to show that the requirements were communicated to the vendor. Hope I'm clear with that. You have a lot more flexibility. We were looking for a document to comply with the 2005, 2017. You can still use a document. However, you have more flexibility, online, phone. Just have to assure that your requirements are being communicated. Okay, that is the end of today's presentation. Like I said, it's a relatively short topic there, excuse me, in terms of the other clauses within the standard. There's a lot of substance there. It's condensed. There's a lot of material there, and it incorporates both contracting and subcontracting. So bear with me 1 minute to see if I have any questions. And before I answer these questions, if they're technical to a specific testing area or even some calibration areas, I'll attempt to answer them the best I could, but I'm not versed in every area of testing that we accredit under, and even calibration. All right, question 1. Can we document a printout of an email that has purchase details of requests for quotes? Well, the standard said you have to have to communicate, and that would have been a good thing to depict there, that email, of course, is a way to communicate. It's used relatively frequently these days. I would say that would if you're able to utilize email to your vendors and communicate your requirements, what you need, yes, email could be used as evidence to produce to your assessor or your internal auditor of how you're communicating your requirements to your vendor. Oh. Does this mean that we have to audit PGLA for inclusions in our approval supplier list? I don't see how accreditation service would impact. We're a service. We're a vendor, and if we are not directly involved in your day-to-day activities, but under even those notes in the standard specifies that. No, you don't have to physically come out and audit us. However, like I sort of stated in my statement, we were going through that, I could start Mike's accreditation service. If you're going to evaluate an accrediting service to be incorporated as into your testing and calibration recognition, we came up with 17011. So I'm nowhere near ready to have things in place to have that recognition. So it's not, we say audit, you have to evaluate. So PJLA, we're recognized under the ILAC arrangements. I'm not saying that could be your criteria, but that is a service that's incorporated into the testing and calibration that would be incorporated into the requirements of 6.5. I gave the example of recognition under ISO 17011 as an evaluator for us or any of the other accrediting bodies under the ILAC umbrella, which would separate them from, let's say, Mike's accreditation service. And you say inclusions of our approval suppliers list. If you're utilizing a approved suppliers list, as an assessor, I would consider them to be to fall under that umbrella, them being PJLA. Okay. Having a little trouble here reading some of these. Bear with me 1 minute, please. Try to make my pane a little bit bigger. Define according to their standard. It could include facilities, environmental controls, and services. If you're compliant, of course, with 17025, of course, you have to comply with those standards. But you may have specific standards that's incorporated in your own quality management system. That's what I was referring to, those documented requirements that you may have independently of what's required within 17025. Yeah, along the same topic, facilities, environmental controls, would vendor competence be necessary to be evaluated under 17025? Not really sure what's being specific, what you're mentioning there. If you have someone who is maintaining your HVAC system, however, you have specific requirements that your environment, say, and your testing or calibration activities need to be controlled, say, plus or minus so many degrees C, plus within, let's say, so much humidity. As long as it's being maintained there, I don't think that's something that would be directly looked at, who's actually doing the maintenance there. It's really up to the lab there. Myself as if you consider that's critical as impacting your testing or calibration activities, myself as an assessor, I'm going to be looking, if it's needed, that the traceability is there as far as measuring them, and then also that the environmental conditions are being maintained, i.e., if they are specific, say, needs to be maintained between 20 and 23 degrees C. I would say that may be something that you may or may not consider when you're evaluating suppliers, as long as those conditions are being met. Hope I'm being clear there. But as an assessor, I'm not particularly looking at who's out there doing the maintenance on your system. That's just that they are being met. But you may be looking at it from a different light, and you may very well get a benefit from having to evaluate them, reevaluate them, and having some sort of criteria for approving them. It looks like that's about it. Let me scroll through here one more time. Okay, very good. That would bring a close to today's topic. Whoop, there. So before I go, I just want to announce next month. So next month is one of my favorites, corrective action. So mark your calendars, February 21st, same time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to look at Section 8.7, corrective action of the 2017 standard. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to having you all log in again with us next month.